I spent Friday running around New Hampshire trying to get Republican presidential candidates to talk to me. I ran after John Huntsman in Concord. Elin Riley, a producer on our show, did get a question to Governor Huntsman even though the campaign told me there was no chance for me to talk to him. Then we drove an hour down to Dublin, New Hampshire, so I could stand in the overflow room at a Rick Santorum event and get a really clear picture of how I was getting nowhere near this supposed Rick Santorum surge. So I sort of went 1 for 2 on talking to candidates that day. Did speak with Buddy Roemer that night live on the show. But then after we finished the show, after we wrapped up at 10 p.m. Eastern, we did the show live, finished at 10. Right at the end of the show, somebody told me that Rick Santorum was in the hotel where we were staying right at that very moment, right then, right above where I was sitting, in fact. On the mezzanine level of our hotel, we found Rick Santorum. He was a special guest on WBZ 1030, which is a big, powerful news radio station out of Boston. The show was hosted by Dan Ray, who's a great host. He was really running the rodeo there, fielding the calls, keeping people on point. I think once Senator Santorum realized that we were there, he wanted to keep taking calls on WBZ all night. But sooner or later, you have to stop, at least for the ads. On the contraception issue, you said you've been mischaracterized on that. Do you think that the country would be better off if there was less contraception use? I saw you talk today about what people, the liberty that people should do what they ought to do, not what they want to do.
I talked about a Brookings Institute study that said that, as 2009 study, said if you do 3 things, you're almost guaranteed not to be in poverty.
Let me know more about.
And those 3 things are, number 1, work. Right? Makes sense. Work. Number 2, graduate from high school. And number 3, if you're a man, get married. If you're a woman, get married. Don't have a child before you're married. Get married, and don't have a child before you're married. If you don't do one of those 3 things, the poverty rate is 74%, and the chance of being a $50,000 or more income is 4%. So I would just make the suggestion that things that would cause the likelihood of any of those 3 things not to happen would probably not be beneficial to you from the standpoint of living a life where you can pursue and have economic success. And of course, engaging in sexual activity, even with contraception, there is a good chance, or there's a chance, not a good chance, a chance to become pregnant.
So if contraception was more effective, you wouldn't have an opinion? I'm sorry, George. I got the commercial break was running out. But Rick Santorum saved by the bell there. That was during a commercial break, which of course ends, and then they go back live on the radio. That was it. That was my time with Rick Santorum. Asked whether the country would be better off with less contraception use. Mr. Santorum, as you saw there, sort of ran out the clock talking about things other than contraception use. Fortunately, though, we do know what Rick Santorum thinks about contraception because he's on the record on the matter. Back when nobody took him all that seriously in terms of his presidential prospects, Rick Santorum made his position on contraception very, very clear.
One of the things I will talk about that no president has talked about before is I think the dangers of contraception in this country. The whole sexual libertine idea. And many in the Christian faith have said, well, that's okay. I mean, contraception's okay. It's not okay because it's a license to do things in the sexual realm that is counter to how things are supposed to be.
In President Santorum's America, birth control is a sexual libertine idea. It is counter to the way that things are supposed to be. At ABC's debate on Saturday, the moderators tried to sort of nail the contraception issue down for this year's various frontrunners. That effort was mostly derailed by Mitt Romney purporting not to understand the question. George Stephanopoulos asked Mr. Romney whether states can ban birth control, whether they ought to be able to make birth control illegal.
Do you believe that states have that right or not?
George, I don't know whether the state has the right to ban contraception. No state wants to. I mean, the idea of you putting forward things that states might want to do that no state wants to do and asking me whether they could do it or not is kind of a silly thing, I think.
What is this birth control business of which you speak? Silly thing. Silly. And so on. Mitt Romney, like Rick Santorum, went on like that for a long time, sort of running out the clock rather than talking about his views on birth control specifically. Fortunately, though, we also know Mitt Romney's position on this, because back in October, he was asked about a constitutional amendment like the one Mike Huckabee was pushing in Mississippi, the so-called personhood amendment, which everybody agrees could make hormonal birth control, like the pill, illegal.
Would you have supported the constitutional amendment that would have established the definition of life at conception?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Mitt Romney says he's absolutely for an amendment like the personhood amendment that Mississippi voters said no to this year. He's absolutely for an amendment that, surprise, could have the effect of outlawing the country's most popular forms of birth control. I know Rick Santorum wants to be the #1 anti-Romney candidate, but there is not much policy difference between Rick Santorum and Mitt Romney on whether or not a state can infringe your right to have birth control. It is remarkable that a candidate as radical as Rick Santorum on issues like this can be considered a top-tier candidate. And it is even more remarkable that Mitt Romney, the overwhelming frontrunner, also can have taken a public position of opposing birth control, the most popular kind of birth control. But what's most remarkable about this year's Republican presidential field, this thing of opposing popular forms of birth control, is the majority position among the entire field of candidates. 5 of this year's Republican hopefuls have signed a personhood pledge from a group called Personhood USA. Of the candidates who are still in the race, Rick Santorum, Newt Gingrich, Rick Perry, they have all signed on. Plus, there's Mitt Romney saying he absolutely supports the idea. Even Ron Paul, libertarian Ron Paul, who says birth control should be legal, even Ron Paul signed the Personhood Pledge. That could make the most common birth control illegal in this country. Birth control has been legal in this country in every state of the union for almost half a century, since the Supreme Court said that states had no right to ban it. Half a century, your right to birth control has been the law of the land. And now comes the current Republican presidential field. It's 2012. Joining us now is Cecile Richards, president of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Ms. Richards, thanks for being here.
Good to see you, Rachel.
Has there been a major party primary in modern American history where being against contraception is the position of anybody other than a fringe candidate?
Never seen this. It's absolutely incredible. It used to be the Republican primary. You know, the whole question was whether or not you wanted to overturn Roe or not. But now that's not good enough. Everyone's for actually ending access to birth control. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Mitt Romney himself wrote his own USA Today editorial saying he would end the National Family Planning Program that now serves 5 million women in America.
So whether or not you have a right to it, you won't be able to get it because that's the means by which women get contraception.
Absolutely. And I think, I know you showed a good clip there of the Saturday night debate when Governor Romney was asked about his position on the right to privacy, which is the whole reason why married couples got the right to birth control. He said he didn't believe in the right to privacy. And if you look at the kind of the Supreme Court express that he's going to, put into judges now that agree with Scalia, Thomas, we would be looking at actually, for the first time, absolutely entertaining the idea of making birth control illegal in America.
Rick Santorum has been very open in the past, as you saw in that day. And I mean, in the past, in October,
right.
About his feeling that birth control is wrong, that it makes for the wrong kind of society, and that he also believes that states have the right to ban it. He's now that he's being taken more seriously as a candidate, saying he doesn't think that states should ban it. Mitt Romney, having said he would support a personhood amendment, which would allow a state like Mississippi to ban abortion, Mitt Romney says that he also doesn't think that states should do that. What do you make of the candidates parsing the sort of could and should of this issue?
I just think you can't trust them. In fact, it's interesting because you look at Mitt Romney in particular. It wasn't that long ago he was actually asking for Planned Parenthood's endorsement. And when he was running in Massachusetts, when it was politically expedient for him, he supported Roe, he supported birth control. Now he's saying he wants to overturn Roe, he wants to eliminate the family planning program. He now has actually pledged to defund Planned Parenthood. I think he is completely wishy-washy, and this is the kind of thing where women can't trust him, what he says about these issues.
I think can we put up on the screen, do we have the PDF of the Planned Parenthood questionnaire that Mitt Romney filled out in 1992? Right, so in 1992, this was 1992, right, when he's running for Senate?
No. It was in 2002.
2002.
When he was running, less than 10 years ago.
Less than 10 years ago, he is running in Massachusetts, filling out the Planned Parenthood questionnaire, seeking support, essentially, from the pro-choice community.
An endorsement from Planned Parenthood.
Does the distance that he has traveled over these past 10 years, is that a Mitt Romney distance, or is that a Republican Party normal distance? Is this represent the distance that the Republican Party has traveled on the choice issue, or is this just about him taking both sides of every important policy?
Well, only Mitt Romney can tell you why he seems to be on every different side of this issue. But I do know that women can't trust him, what he says now. I do think, to your point in the beginning, we are seeing a Republican primary that is absolutely a race to the bottom for women, where they are trying to outdo themselves on who would be the worst president for women.
Michelle Bachmann was the only Republican presidential candidate this year who was female. She does not have progressive policies on any of these issues. Is it a loss for women that Michelle Bachmann dropped out of the race because Republicans aren't considering a female candidate, or does it not matter because they have anti-woman policies in your view?
Well, I mean, I think we should have more women running for office overall, but obviously we didn't agree with Michelle Bachmann on any positions. That said, I wish there were more women running. I mean, I think what's going to be interesting is when we look at Rachel in November, the majority of voters are going to be women.
Yeah.
And they're going to be paying attention to how candidates stand on women's health issues. And I was just in New Hampshire as well. Republican women who support Planned Parenthood are very, very disturbed about the extreme nature of the Republican primary and wondering where they're going to go.
I will say it was striking to see campaign signs on corners all over New Hampshire, and every once in a while to see Planned Parenthood signs, women are watching signs in there among the candidate signs. It's very striking.
Yep.
I bet you're behind that. Well done. Cecile Richards, president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Thank you for coming.
It's great to see you again.
Great to see you.